Danny Carver sat alone in his small ship, eating cold noodles from a metal can. The stars outside his window were quiet and endless. He liked it that way. No people, no problems, just him, his tools, and the broken ships he found floating in the darkness of space. He was 28 years old. He had left Earth 5 years ago because the cities were too loud and too crowded. Out here in the outer rim near the trade corridor, he could breathe. He could think. He could be alone. His job was simple. He found wrecked ships. He took them apart. He sold the pieces to anyone who paid fair credits. It was not exciting work, but it was honest work. Danny did not need excitement. He needed peace. The scanner on his console made a soft beeping sound. Danny put down his noodles and looked at the screen. A ship was drifting near the asteroid field about 2 hours away. The computer said it was badly damaged. It also said there were life signs inside. Danny leaned closer to the screen. The markings on the ship made his stomach feel cold. It was a Dominion Consortium vessel, the Slavers. Everyone in the outer rim knew about the Dominion. They were criminals who bought and sold people like objects. They had connections everywhere. Police, politicians, station managers. If you made trouble for the Dominion, you disappeared. It was that simple. Danny should ignore this ship. He knew that. Any smart person would fly away and forget they ever saw it. The life signs were probably just injured slavers anyway. They deserved whatever happened to them. But the scanner showed something strange. The life signs were coming from the cargo hold, not the crew quarters, the cargo hold. Danny stared at the screen for a long time. Then he put on his space suit and started his engines. The flight to the wreck took almost 2 hours. The Dominion ship was in bad shape. Something had torn through the hull in several places. Smoke and frozen air drifted from the wounds in the metal. Whatever happened here had happened fast. Danny docked his small ship, the Gray Sparrow, against an airlock that still seemed to work. He checked his cutting tools and his small pistol. Then he opened the door and went inside. The smell hit him first. Blood and smoke and something else. Something animal. The emergency lights were still working, casting everything in a dull red glow. Danny moved slowly through the corridor, stepping over broken equipment and shattered glass. He found the first body near the bridge. A Dominion trader, his uniform torn open, deep claw marks across his chest. His face was frozen in an expression of complete terror. Danny had seen dead people before. You could not work in the outer rim without seeing death. But this was different. This man had not just died. He had been killed by something very angry and very strong. There were more bodies as Danny went deeper into the ship. 7 in total. All of them had the same wounds. All of them had the same look of fear on their dead faces. Whatever killed them had moved through this ship like a storm of claws and fury. Danny found the cargo hold at the bottom of the ship. The door was bent and broken. Something had tried very hard to get out of this room. He climbed through the twisted metal and turned on his flashlight. She was lying in the corner. Danny stopped breathing for a moment. He had never seen her in person before, only in old pictures and history files. They were supposed to be extinct. The Dominion had hunted them for decades because they were too dangerous and too proud to be controlled. But here one was, alive. She was enormous. Even lying down, Danny could tell she was at least 7 feet tall. Her body was covered in dark silver fur, now matted with dried blood. Her face was like a great cat from Earth, with a wide nose and sharp teeth visible between her lips. Her ears were pressed flat against her head. And she was wrapped in chains. Neural chains. Danny recognized them. They were designed to deliver terrible pain at the smallest sign of resistance. The metal bands wrapped around her throat, her wrists, her ankles. Small lights blinked on each one, showing they were still active. The eyes opened. They were amber-colored like honey held up to sunlight, but there was no light in them. No hope, no anger, just exhaustion and acceptance. She looked at Danny the way someone looks at the ground before they fall. Danny stood very still. His heart was beating fast. This creature had killed 7 armed men. She could kill him easily, chains or no chains. He should turn around. He should go back to his ship. He should fly away and forget any of this ever happened. The closed her eyes again. She did not speak. She did not move. She simply lay there waiting to die. Danny thought about his life on Earth. He thought about the people who had been cruel to him for no reason. He thought about the times he had needed help and no one had come. He thought about what it felt like to be alone and trapped and forgotten. He walked forward and knelt beside her. The eyes opened again. She watched him, but she did not react. She seemed confused. Danny pulled out his cutting tools and examined the neural chains. They were complicated, but he was a good mechanic. He understood machines. "This is going to hurt," he said quietly. "I am sorry, I will try to be fast." The said nothing, she just watched. Danny started cutting. The first chain was around her left wrist. When it broke apart, they made a small sound of pain, but she did not move. Danny worked on the second chain, then the third. Each one took several minutes. His hands were sweating inside his gloves. The collar around her neck was the hardest. It was connected directly to her spine with small metal hooks. Danny had to be very careful not to damage any nerves. He worked slowly, talking softly as he cut. "I do not know if you can understand me. I do not know much about your people, but I know what these chains do. I know what the Dominion does. And I know that nobody deserves this." The collar finally came free. They took a deep, shuddering breath. It was the first real breath she had taken in years without metal pressing against her throat. Danny sat back and looked at her. "Can you walk?" They stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she pushed herself up into a sitting position. She was shaking. Her muscles had been damaged by years of chains and torture, but she was alive. She was free. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was rough and broken from years of not speaking. Danny stood up and offered her his hand. "Because nobody deserves to be in a cage." They looked at his hand. Then she looked at his face. Something changed in her amber eyes. Something that had been dead for a very long time started to wake up. She took his hand and let him help her to her feet. Danny Carver, simple salvage mechanic, had no idea what he had just started. He did not know about the ancient traditions of her people. He did not know about the bond between war guardians and their chosen partners. He did not know that this single act of kindness would change the galaxy forever. All he knew was that there had been a person in a cage, and now she was free. That was enough. Her name was... She had not said that name out loud in almost 10 years. The Dominion had taken it from her along with everything else. They had called her numbers. They had called her beast. They had called her weapon, but never her name. Now she lay on a small cot in the human ship, wrapped in a thin blanket, staring at the metal ceiling above her. Her body ached everywhere. The places where the chains had been burned and throbbed. But for the first time in a decade, she was not in pain from the neural devices. For the first time in a decade, she could move without punishment. She could hear the human working somewhere in the ship. He was making noise with tools and talking to himself. He seemed to do that a lot. Did not understand him. She did not understand any of this. When the Dominion ship had crashed, she had seen her chance. The chains had weakened from the damage. She had broken free and killed everyone she could find. 17 of them. 17 slavers who had hurt her and sold her and treated her like an animal. She had enjoyed killing them. She was not ashamed of that. Then the ship had gone dark and cold, and she had been too weak to escape. She had crawled back to the cargo hold because it was the only place she knew. She had waited there to die. But the human had come. He was so small, so fragile, could break him in half without trying. She had killed men 3 times his size with her bare claws, and yet this tiny creature had walked into a ship full of death, found her covered in blood and chains, and decided to help her. Why? The question would not leave her mind. Among her people, the nothing was free. Every action had meaning. Every gift created a debt. This was the way of things. It had always been the way of things. If someone saved your life, you owed them everything. Your strength, your loyalty, your future. This was called the blood debt, and it was the most sacred bond her people knew. Who failed to honor a blood debt was considered worse than dead. They were forgotten. Their name was erased from all memory. But the human did not seem to know about blood debts. He had freed her and asked for nothing. He had given her food and water and a place to rest. He had not even locked the doors of his ship. Did not know what to do with this. The door to her small room opened. The human stood there with a tray of food. It was simple stuff, some kind of grain mixed with vegetables, but it smelled good, real food, not the nutrient paste the Dominion fed to their slaves. "I brought dinner," he said, "if you are hungry." Sat up slowly. Her muscles screamed at her, but she ignored them. "Thank you." The human put the tray on a small table near her cot. He seemed nervous around her. She supposed that made sense. She was much bigger than him, and he had seen what she could do. Most creatures would be afraid of her. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Weak admitted, "But better, your medicine helped." The human nodded. "I do not have much, just basic stuff for cuts and burns. You probably need a real doctor." "I will heal." Were strong. Their bodies could recover from wounds that would kill other species. She just needed time and food. The human turned to leave, but spoke before she could stop herself. "What is your name?" He stopped and looked back at her. Danny Carver." Danny Carver." She tested the sounds in her mouth. Human names were strange, short and flat, but there was something honest about them. "I am." He smiled a little. It changed his face, made him look younger, kinder. "That is a nice name." "It is all I have left." The human smile faded. He looked at her with something in his eyes that she did not expect. Sadness, understanding, not pity. Pity was weak and useless, but real understanding. "The nearest free station is 3 days away," he said. "I can take you there, help you find passage to wherever you want to go, if there is anywhere." Thought about this. Where would she go? Her home world was destroyed. Her family was dead. Her entire species had been scattered across the galaxy like dust in the wind. She had no destination, no purpose, nothing waiting for her anywhere. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Danny shrugged. It was such a human gesture. Had seen other humans do it during her years as a fighting slave. It meant they did not think their answer was important. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply. "Because nobody deserves what they did to you." Then he left. Sat in the darkness for a long time after he was gone. She ate the food he had brought. She listened to the sounds of his ship. She thought about blood debts and honor and the old ways of her people. She thought about war guardians. Before the fall of the Empire, the war guardians had been the greatest warriors her people had ever known. They were not just soldiers. They were protectors. Each guardian chose a single person to defend, someone called their heart chosen. The bond between guardian and heart chosen was unbreakable. It lasted until death and beyond. The Dominion had feared the war guardians more than anything. A guardian fighting for their heart chosen was unstoppable. They felt no fear. They knew no retreat. They would walk through fire and blood to keep their chosen safe. Had been trained as a war guardian before the Dominion captured her. She had learned all the ancient techniques. She had studied all the sacred traditions, but she had never completed her training. She had never found anyone worthy of the bond. Until now. Danny Carver was weak. He was small. He was just a mechanic who fixed broken machines. He had no power. He had no importance. He was nothing special in the eyes of the galaxy. But he had walked into danger to save a stranger. He had freed her without asking for anything. He had shown her kindness when cruelty would have been easier and safer. Among them, there was a word for such people. They were called the worthy ones. They were rare. Most beings in the galaxy lived only for themselves. They cared only about credits and comfort and survival, but some few lived for others. They gave without counting the cost. They helped without expecting reward. The worthy ones were the only beings that war guardians could bond with, and Danny Carver was one of them. Made her decision. She did not sleep that night. Instead, she prepared herself. She cleaned her fur as best she could. She stretched her damaged muscles. She remembered the words of the bonding ceremony that her teachers had taught her so many years ago. When morning came, she went to find the human. Danny was in the cockpit checking navigation charts. He looked up when she entered, his eyes widening a little. He was still nervous around her. That would change. Knelt before him. It was not easy. Her body protested every movement. But she knelt anyway, her head bowed, her hands open at her sides. "What are you doing?" Danny asked. He sounded confused and a little alarmed. "I am completing the ancient rite," said. "You saved my life when you had no reason to. You freed me from chains when it would have been safer to leave me. You showed kindness to a stranger when the galaxy shows only cruelty." She looked up at him, meeting his eyes directly. "Among my people, such acts cannot go unanswered. I owe you a blood debt that I can never fully repay, but I can offer you something greater than payment. I can offer you myself." Danny stared at her. "I do not understand." "I am a war guardian. I was trained to protect, to serve, to fight for those who are worthy. I have never found anyone worthy before. But you are worthy, Danny Carver. You are my heart chosen." She placed her right hand over her chest, where her heart beat steady and strong. "From this moment until my last breath, I am your guardian. Your enemies are my enemies. Your battles are my battles. I will stand beside you in darkness and in light. I will protect you with my life and my death. This is my oath. It cannot be broken." Danny just kept staring. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I am sorry," he said finally. "You are my what now?" Felt something strange happen to her face. It took her a moment to realize she was smiling. She had not smiled in 10 years. "I am your guardian," she said, "and you are my human." Danny looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed and rubbed his face with his hands. "I just wanted to find scrap metal and sell it for credits," he muttered. "I just wanted a quiet life." "Fate has other plans for you," said. She rose to her feet. It felt good to stand. It felt good to have purpose again. The long years of chains and darkness faded behind her like a bad dream. Danny Carver did not know what he had become. He did not understand the ancient traditions or the sacred bonds. He thought he was just a simple mechanic who had done a simple good deed. But knew the truth. She had chosen him, and a heart chosen, once claimed by a war guardian, was never simple again. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when kindness met fury. The bounty notice appeared on every station screen in the sector. Danny stared at it while his breakfast grew cold in front of him. His own face looked back at him from the display. It was not a good picture. His hair was messy and his eyes looked tired. Below the picture were the words that made his stomach turn. "Wanted alive. Danny Carver, human male. Crime, theft of Dominion Consortium property. Reward, 500,000 credits." 500,000 credits. That was enough to buy a small ship. That was enough to retire on some quiet moon and never work again. That was enough to make almost anyone in the Outer Rim consider betrayal. "That is a lot of zeros," Danny said. Stood behind him, her amber eyes fixed on the screen. "They will send hunters, many of them." "How many?" "As many as it takes." His voice was calm, but her claws were out. They made small clicking sounds against the metal floor. "The Dominion does not forgive. They do not forget. You stole their property. They will make an example of you." Danny pushed his food away. He was not hungry anymore. "You are not property." "They do not see it that way." "Then they are wrong." Looked at him. There was something warm in her expression that had not been there when they first met. "You truly believe that?" "Of course I believe it, because it is true." They had been flying together for 6 days now. 6 days since Danny had cut the chains from her body. 6 days since she had knelt before him and sworn an oath he still did not fully understand. In that time, he had learned a little about her people, about the empire that had once ruled 100 star systems, about the war guardians who had protected the worthy, about the fall and the scattering and the long years of hiding. He had also learned that was very serious about her oath. She followed him everywhere. She slept outside his door. She watched everyone who came near him with suspicious eyes. It was strange and uncomfortable, but Danny was starting to get used to it. "We need supplies," Danny said. "Food, fuel, medicine. We cannot run forever." "No," agreed, "but we can run far enough to find allies." "What allies? I'm a salvage mechanic. I do not have allies, I have customers." Whiskers twitched. Danny had learned that this meant she was thinking, or possibly amused. Sometimes it was hard to tell. "There are places in the galaxy where the Dominion is weak," she said. "Free stations, rebel territories. If we can reach them, we might find shelter. And if we cannot reach them, then we fight." Danny looked at her. She was enormous and powerful and deadly. She had killed 17 armed men with her bare claws. If anyone could fight the Dominion, it was her. But Danny was just a mechanic. He could fix engines and patch holes and rewire damaged systems. He could not fight. He had never been in a real battle in his life. "I do not know how to fight," he said honestly. Put her hand on his shoulder. It was heavy and warm, and her claws were very close to his neck, but somehow he did not feel afraid. "You do not need to know how to fight," she said. "That is my job. Your job is to survive." They docked at Relay Station 17 3 days later. Danny had been to this station before. It was a trading post at the edge of civilized space, full of smugglers and merchants and travelers who asked no questions. The perfect place to buy supplies without being noticed. Or so he thought. They had been on the station for less than an hour when the trouble started. Danny was negotiating with a fuel trader, trying to get a fair price for enough power cells to reach the next safe zone. Stood behind him, watching everything with her sharp predator eyes. The trader looked nervous. He kept glancing at and then away. He kept looking at something over Danny's shoulder. "Is something wrong?" Danny asked. The trader shook his head quickly. "No, nothing wrong. Let me check my inventory." He disappeared into the back of his shop. He did not come back. Danny turned around and saw them. 3 Dominion enforcers were walking toward the shop. They wore heavy armor and carried pulse rifles. Their faces were hidden behind dark helmets. They moved like predators, confident and unhurried. "We need to leave," Danny said. "No," stepped forward, placing herself between Danny and the approaching enforcers. "You need to hide. I need to work." "There are 3 of them. They have guns." She looked back at him. There was something terrifying and beautiful in her amber eyes, something old and fierce and hungry. "Hide," she said again, "now." Danny did not argue. He scrambled behind a stack of cargo containers at the back of the shop. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. The enforcers reached the shop entrance. One of them spoke through his helmet speaker, making his voice sound cold and mechanical. "Danny Carver, you are wanted for theft of consortium property. Surrender yourself and the stolen animal, and you will not be harmed." Animal? They called her an animal. After everything the Dominion had done to her, they still saw her as nothing more than a thing to be owned. His response was not verbal. She moved so fast that Danny could barely see her. One moment she was standing still. The next moment she was among the enforcers, her claws flashing in the station lights. The first enforcer died before he could raise his weapon. Claws went through his armor like it was made of paper. She caught his falling rifle and used it to block the second enforcer's shot. Then she threw the rifle at his face and closed the distance before he could recover. The third enforcer managed to fire. The pulse beam hit in the shoulder. She made a sound of pain but did not stop. She tackled him to the ground and ended him with a single strike. The whole fight lasted maybe 30 seconds. Danny came out from behind the cargo containers. His legs felt weak. His hands were shaking. He had never seen anything like that before. He had never even imagined anything like that before. Stood among the bodies, her fur splattered with blood. The wound on her shoulder was smoking slightly, but she ignored it. Her amber eyes were bright and alive in a way they had not been before. "We should leave," she said calmly. "Others will come." Danny nodded. He could not find words, he just nodded. They ran through the station, past shocked traders and terrified travelers. Danny led the way because he knew the layout, followed close behind, watching for more threats. They reached the docking bay and found the gray sparrow surrounded by station security. "Stop there," one of the security officers shouted. "You are under arrest for murder." Danny's heart sank. They were trapped. The Dominion enforcers were dead, but now they had to deal with station security. He did not want to hurt these people. They were just doing their jobs. But was already moving forward, her claws raised. "Wait," Danny grabbed her arm. It was like grabbing a steel beam, but she stopped. "Wait, let me try something." He stepped forward, his hands raised. "Those men were Dominion slavers. They were here to kidnap me and return my friend to slavery. We were defending ourselves, nothing more." The security officers looked at each other. One of them, an older human with gray hair, stepped forward. "The Dominion has a bounty on your head," he said. 500,000 credits. "I know. That is a lot of money." "I know that too." The older officer looked at. He looked at her silver fur and her amber eyes and her claws that were still stained with blood. Then he looked back at Danny. "The Dominion brings nothing but trouble to this station," he said slowly. "They threaten our traders. They kidnap our citizens. They treat everyone like slaves waiting to be caught." He holstered his weapon. "I did not see anything here today," he said. "Get on your ship and leave. Do not come back for a while." Danny stared at him. "Thank you." The officer shook his head. "Do not thank me, just go, and maybe do something about those Dominion bastards. Someone needs to." Danny and boarded the Gray Sparrow and launched within minutes. They did not speak until they were safely in hyperspace, far from the station and its complicated mix of danger and kindness. "That was unexpected," said finally. "The officer let us go." "He hates the Dominion," Danny said. "Lots of people do. They just do not have the power to fight back." Was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that Danny would remember for the rest of his life. "Perhaps they need someone to show them that fighting back is possible." Danny looked at her. "What do you mean?" "The Dominion is powerful because people believe they are invincible, because people believe that resisting is hopeless. But today, 3 of their enforcers died and we escaped. Today, a station officer chose defiance over obedience." Her amber eyes met his. "Perhaps that is how empires fall, not in great battles but in small moments of courage, small choices to say no, small acts of kindness and resistance that spread like fire." Danny thought about this for a long time. He thought about the chains he had cut from his body. He thought about the security officer who had looked the other way. He thought about all the people in the galaxy who suffered under the Dominion's cruelty and wished for something better. "I am still just a mechanic," he said. Smiled. It was strange to see such a fearsome creature smile, but somehow it looked right on her face. "You are more than that, Danny Carver. You just do not know it yet." And somewhere in the darkness between stars, something was beginning to stir. Word was spreading through hidden channels and secret networks. A war guardian had risen. A human had earned the bond, and the Dominion was afraid. The galaxy was starting to wake up. The first visitor came 3 weeks after the fight at Relay Station 17. Danny was repairing a damaged power converter in the engine room when called him to the cockpit. Her voice was strange, not alarmed but not calm either, something he had not heard before. "There is a ship approaching," she said. "A small transport, single pilot." Danny wiped the grease from his hands and came to look at the scanner. The approaching vessel was old and battered, barely holding together. Not a threat, just another traveler in the endless void. "Should I be worried?" he asked. Was staring at the screen with an expression he could not read. "The pilot is." Danny looked at her. In all the time they had traveled together had never mentioned other. He had assumed she was alone, the last of her kind. "I thought your people were gone," he said carefully. "So did I." The transport docked with the Gray Sparrow an hour later. Danny stood in the airlock with beside him, watching the door slide open. The visitor was smaller than, his fur was dark brown with streaks of gray. He was old, Danny realized. Very old. His movements were slow and careful, and his amber eyes were clouded with age. But when he saw, those old eyes went wide with shock. "Guardian," he breathed, "you are truly here, the stories are true." Stepped forward. There was emotion in her face that Danny had never seen before. Pain, hope, something like grief. "Elder," she said, "I thought everyone was dead." "Many are dead, but not all." The old looked at Danny. "And this is the human who freed you. This is Danny Carver, my heart chosen." The old bowed his head. It was a gesture of deep respect that made Danny feel uncomfortable. "I am called," the old one said. "I was a teacher long ago before the fall. Now I am just a wanderer, but I heard the whispers on the hidden channels. A war guardian has risen. A human has earned the bond. I had to come. I had to see for myself." Danny did not know what to say. He settled for the simplest truth. "I just cut some chains. Anyone would have done the same." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "No, young human. Anyone would not have done the same. Most would have looked away. Most would have decided that the risk was too great and the reward too small. Most would have let her die in that wreck." He looked at Danny with those ancient, clouded eyes. "But you did not. You chose kindness when cruelty would have been easier. You chose courage when fear would have been wiser. That is not common. That is rare beyond measure." After others came. A female named Senna, young and fierce, who had escaped the Dominion fighting pits 2 years ago. A mated pair and who had hidden on a remote moon for a decade, raising children in secret. 3 siblings whose names translated roughly to stone, river, and sky, who had served on merchant vessels under false identities. Within 2 months, Danny had a fleet. It was not a proper fleet, just 7 ships of various sizes and conditions, held together with hope and salvaged parts. But it was something, a beginning. They called themselves the Reclaimed. "I do not understand," Danny said to one night. They were sitting in the cockpit of the Gray Sparrow, watching the stars drift by. Around them, the other ships of their little fleet flew in loose formation. "Why are they looking at me like that? I am nobody important." "You are very important," said. "You just do not see it. I see a mechanic who got lucky, that is all." Turned to face him fully. In the dim light of the cockpit, her silver fur seemed to glow. Her amber eyes were soft but serious. "Among my people there is an old prophecy. Not all believe it, but many remember it. It says that when the empire falls and darkness covers the stars, a light will come from an unexpected place. A worthy one will rise, not through power or wealth, but through simple kindness. And that kindness will spark a fire that burns away the darkness." Danny stared at her. "You think I am some kind of prophecy? I think you are someone who did a good thing without expecting reward. I think you are someone who showed mercy to a stranger when mercy was dangerous. I think you are someone who sees a person where others see only a beast." She paused. Whether that makes you a prophecy or just a good human, I do not know, but my people have been scattered and broken for so long. They need hope. They need something to believe in. She put her hand on his shoulder. They believe in you, Danny Carver, and so do I. Danny looked out at the stars. He thought about his old life, the quiet simplicity of salvage work and lonely meals and empty days. He thought about how much had changed in such a short time. I do not know how to lead anyone, he admitted. I do not know how to be a symbol or a hero or whatever they think I am. Then do not be those things, said. Just be yourself. Be the human who saw someone in pain and chose to help. That is enough. That is more than enough. The old teacher became their advisor. He knew things that had been forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. He knew about history and culture. He knew about the old alliances and the hidden paths between stars. He knew about the weaknesses of the Dominion. They are strong, but they are not loved, explained during one of their council meetings. All that had gathered on the largest ship, a converted cargo hauler that and had claimed years ago. Danny sat among them, feeling small and out of place. The Dominion rules through fear and money, continued. They bribe officials and threaten populations and crush any resistance before it can grow. But fear is not loyalty. Money is not trust. When people see that the Dominion can be hurt, when they see that resistance is possible, they will remember their anger. How do we show them that? Asked Senna, the young female. She was impatient and hungry for action. Danny understood the feeling. We already have, said. He looked at Danny with something like pride. The story of Relay Station 17 has spread far. A human mechanic and a freed war guardian killed 3 Dominion enforcers and escaped. The bounty on Danny Carver has doubled. Do you know what that means? That I am worth more dead or alive. Laughed, a rough sound like stones grinding together. It means the Dominion is afraid. They do not double bounties for threats they consider small. They double bounties for problems they cannot control. Spoke next. We should not attack them directly. Not yet. We are too few and they are too strong, but we can help others. We can protect ships from pirates. We can rescue prisoners from transport vessels. We can show the galaxy that there is another way. The council agreed. They would not be conquerors or revolutionaries. They would be helpers, protectors. A small light in the darkness showing people that hope was still possible. Over the following months, the reclaimed grew, not just with survivors but with others who had suffered under the Dominion. Humans who had lost family to slavers. Aliens from a dozen different species who had been victims of the consortium's cruelty. Traders and smugglers and ordinary people who wanted to fight back but had never had the chance. Danny worked harder than he had ever worked before. He fixed ships and trained mechanics and attended endless meetings. He listened to stories of pain and loss. He offered what comfort he could. He tried to be worthy of the trust people placed in him, even when he felt like a fraud. And slowly, something changed inside him. He was still a mechanic at heart. He still loved the simple satisfaction of fixing a broken machine, of making something work that had been dead and useless. But now he understood that he could fix more than machines. He could fix hope. He could repair the broken spirits of people who had given up. One night found him sitting alone on the observation deck of their new flagship, a captured Dominion patrol ship they had renamed the Silver Dawn. He was staring out at the stars, his face tired but peaceful. "You have changed," she said, sitting beside him. "Everyone keeps saying that." "Because it is true." She looked at him with those amber eyes that he had come to love like the eyes of a sister. "When I first met you, you were hiding from the world. You wanted nothing but solitude and silence. Now you carry the hopes of hundreds on your shoulders and you do not break." Danny smiled slightly. "I break all the time. I just put myself back together before anyone notices." "That is what strength is," said. "Not avoiding damage, surviving it, learning from it, growing because of it." She put her arm around his shoulders. It was a gesture that would have seemed impossible in those first days when she was still more predator than friend. Now it felt natural, comfortable, right. "We have received word from our scouts," she said. "The Dominion is gathering a war fleet. They are coming for us." Danny nodded slowly. He had known this would happen eventually. You could not defy an empire forever without consequences. "How many ships?" 12 warships, more than enough to destroy everything we have built." Danny thought for a long moment. He thought about all the people who had joined them, all the hopes and dreams and desperate courage they had gathered, all the small moments of kindness that had led to this impossible situation. "Then I guess we have to figure out how to beat 12 warships," he said finally. Bared her teeth in a fierce grin. "I was hoping you would say that." Far across the galaxy, in the cold heart of Dominion space, commanders were receiving their orders. They were to proceed to the outer rim. They were to locate and destroy the group known as the Reclaimed. They were to kill the human called Danny Carver and bring back the head of the War Guardian called. They expected an easy victory. They expected frightened refugees and stolen ships. They expected nothing that could stand against their power. They were wrong. The Dominion fleet arrived in the shadow of a dying red star. 12 warships, bristling with weapons, carrying enough firepower to destroy a small moon. They spread out across the void in perfect formation, their commanders confident of an easy victory. Danny watched them on the display screen of the Silver Dawn. His mouth was dry and his hands were cold, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "All ships report in." One by one, the vessels of the Reclaimed confirmed their readiness. There were only 7 of them, 7 ships against 12. The math was not complicated. The outcome should have been obvious. But Danny had learned something important in his months with the Reclaimed. Math did not always tell the whole story. Stood at his side, her silver fur gleaming in the bridge lights. Around them, a mixed crew of and humans worked their stations with focused intensity. Fear was present. You could smell it in the recycled air. But so was determination. "They are hailing us," the communications officer reported. She was a young human named Lisa, barely 20 years old, who had joined them after the Dominion killed her parents. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life. A Dominion admiral appeared, a tall alien with gray skin and cold black eyes. His uniform was covered in medals and symbols of rank. He looked at Danny with open contempt. "You are the human who has caused so much trouble," the admiral said. "I expected someone more impressive." "Sorry to disappoint you," Danny replied. "Surrender now and your death will be quick. Resist and we will take you alive. I promise you the second option is much less pleasant." Danny looked at the 12 warships on his tactical display. He looked at the faces of his crew, people who had trusted him with their lives. He looked at, who watched him with absolute faith in her amber eyes. Then he looked back at the admiral. "I am going to give you a different choice," Danny said. "Turn around, leave this sector. Tell your masters that the outer rim belongs to free people now. Do this and we will let you go in peace." The admiral laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "You are either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both," Danny admitted. "But I am also very good at fixing things, and the galaxy is badly broken. Time to start repairs." He cut the transmission. The battle began. The Dominion fleet advanced in a standard attack formation. They expected the Reclaimed ships to scatter and run. That was what refugees did. That was what prey did. But the Reclaimed did not run. Danny had spent weeks preparing for this moment. He had studied every ship in their fleet, learned every strength and weakness. He had worked with and the other to develop tactics that used speed and coordination instead of raw firepower. "All ships execute pattern Delta," Danny commanded. The 7 vessels of the Reclaimed split into 3 groups. They did not fly straight at the enemy. Instead, They curved and wove in complex patterns, making themselves difficult to target. They dove through asteroid clusters and used the radiation from the dying star to mask their signatures. And they fought, led the boarding teams. While Danny coordinated from the Silver Dawn, she and the other warriors launched themselves at Dominion vessels in small attack craft. They cut through hulls and fought their way inside, tearing through crews with the fury of a people who had been hunted for too long. Danny watched the battle unfold on his screen. He directed repairs when ships took damage. He rerouted power to failing shields. He called out enemy positions and coordinated attacks. He was not a warrior, but he understood machines. He understood systems. And he understood that every ship was just a very complicated machine. The first Dominion warship exploded 20 minutes into the battle. A team had reached its reactor and overloaded the core. The blast lit up the void like a small sun. Then something unexpected happened. New ships appeared on the edge of the sensor range. Not Dominion vessels. These were civilian transports, cargo haulers, mining ships. They were coming from all directions, emerging from hyperspace in a scattered wave. "What is this?" Danny asked. Lisa looked up from her console, her eyes wide. "They are sending messages. They say they are here to help." Danny stared at the screen. The new arrivals numbered in the dozens, then the hundreds. Ships of all sizes and configurations, from tiny one-person craft to massive industrial platforms. They carried no military weapons, but they flew toward the battle without hesitation. "Who are they?" "Everyone," Lisa said. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Traders from Relay Station 17, miners from the Belt Colonies, refugees from a dozen worlds. They heard about the battle. They came to fight." Danny felt something break open in his chest. All those months of helping people, of rescuing prisoners, of showing small kindnesses in a cruel galaxy. He had never expected anything in return. He had just done what seemed right. But kindness had a power of its own. It spread. It reached into the hearts of people and reminded them that they were not alone. The new arrivals were not soldiers. They could not match the Dominion's weapons, but they could get in the way. They could ram enemy vessels with their reinforced hulls. They could create chaos and confusion. They could die for something they believed in. And they did. The battle became a storm of fire and metal and courage. Dominion ships found themselves surrounded by swarms of civilian craft that refused to flee. Their weapons could not track so many targets. Their formations fell apart. Their confidence shattered. And her boarding teams captured 3 more warships. Danny directed the captured vessels to turn their guns on their former allies. The remaining Dominion ships began to panic. 2 hours after the battle began, it was over. 8 Dominion warships had been destroyed. The other 4 were fleeing into hyperspace, their crews broken and terrified. The Reclaimed had lost dozens of vessels, hundreds of people. The cost was terrible. But they had won. Danny sat on the bridge of the Silver Dawn, surrounded by cheering crew members, and felt nothing but exhaustion. The adrenaline was fatting. The reality of what they had done was beginning to sink in. They had defeated a Dominion war fleet. They had shown the galaxy that the slavers could be beaten. Nothing would be the same again. Returned from the captured ships covered in blood and burn marks. She walked onto the bridge and stood before Danny, her amber eyes bright with emotion. "It is done," she said. "We have won." "A lot of people died," Danny replied quietly. "Yes, they died fighting for something they believed in. They died as free people, not as slaves." She knelt before him just as she had on that first day when she swore her oath. "You gave them that. You gave all of us that." Danny looked at her. He looked at the crew around him, humans and others who had come together around an impossible dream. He looked at the stars beyond the viewport, the same stars he had gazed at during all those lonely years of salvage work. "I did not do anything special," he said. "I just tried to be kind." "That is everything," replied. "That is the most special thing in the universe." The news of the battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Dominion had been defeated. The slavers had been humiliated. A human mechanic and a freed war guardian had led an army of refugees to victory against impossible odds. Within weeks, rebellions broke out in a dozen Dominion-controlled systems. Slaves rose against their masters. Traitors refused to pay tribute. Politicians who had been loyal to the consortium suddenly discovered their courage and joined the resistance. The old order was crumbling. Something new was being born. Danny Carver stood on the observation deck of a captured Dominion command ship, watching the stars. The war was far from over. The Dominion still controlled vast territories and commanded enormous resources. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, more terrible choices. But for this moment, he allowed himself to feel hope. Approached and stood beside him. They had been through so much together. She was no longer just his guardian. She was his family, his sister in all the ways that mattered. "You have changed the galaxy," she said. Danny shook his head. "I just fixed some engines and tried not to die." Laughed softly. "You showed them that kindness is not weakness, that compassion can be the foundation of strength, that one person acting from the heart can inspire millions." She turned to face him fully. "This is what humans do best, Danny Carver. You hope when hope seems foolish. You fight when fighting seems pointless. You love when love seems dangerous." She placed her paw over his heart. "This is why I chose you. This is why the reclaimed follow you. This is why the Dominion fears you." Danny looked up at her, at this magnificent creature who had become the most important person in his life. He thought about the scared, lonely mechanic he had been just a year ago. He thought about the cage he had found her in and the chains he had cut away. "You know," he said, "I never asked for any of this. I just wanted a quiet life." "Fate had other plans." "Yeah," he smiled slightly, "I guess it did." Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the survivors of the Dominion fleet were carrying news of their defeat back to their masters. Somewhere in the light, freed slaves were taking their first breaths of liberty. Somewhere in the vast and complicated galaxy, ordinary people were discovering that they could make a difference after all. It had started with a human who refused to walk past a cage. It had grown into a movement that would reshape civilization. And it would end someday with the dawn of a new era. An era where kindness was not weakness, where compassion was not foolishness, where the strong protected the weak instead of exploiting them. Danny did not know if he would live to see that day. The road ahead was long and dangerous, but he knew one thing for certain. He would never stop trying. He would never stop fixing. He would never stop being the person who saw someone in pain and chose to help. That was who he was. That was what he had become. And for the first time in his life, Danny Carver understood that being himself was enough. The stars stretched out before him, infinite and beautiful and full of possibility. The dawn was coming, and he would be there to see it rise.